Hey everyone, welcome to Taste Different Gaming Appetizers. What are we talking about tonight? Well, talking about Gravity Rush. And, well, really the Gravity Rush creator. So, the team behind Gravity Rush, which was, back then it was one of PlayStation's highlighted titles from Japan's studio. And they were known for delivering various high-profile IPs for PlayStation, but they eventually closed down in 2021. Reflecting on the closure, the Gravity Rush creator recently highlighted a major reason for Japan Studios' decline. He outlined that PlayStation wanted big-budget games from the team, despite the studio's knack for more creative and experimental releases. The creator explained that he does not necessarily need big budgets to deliver great games. However, PlayStation may not have been fond of his projects. He highlighted that Sony envisioned a future similar to other big teams for Japan studio. The developer eventually went on to form his own independent studio, and he believes the decision has been for the better. Right now, so he can basically focus on the games he wants to make to better express himself. So it sounds like Japan Studio got closed down to the different visions. Them wanting to create more unique experiences, and Sony wanting to create more high-profile, big budget games. Japan Studio, when the developer that they went off and created their own studios, is actually making that Slitherhead game. If you've seen the trailers for that one, it's kind of like survival horror, weird looking game with a weird name. But hey, from my perspective, the big budget games are nice and all, but I like the unique, out of the left field experiences, right? I like those small, weird projects. Because I like the big budget games too, but we get a lot of those, right? And it's nice to have, it'd be better, I think, personally, to have someone like Sony or Microsoft or whoever who do deliver big budget games, but then they have some studios that deliver these small, like, unique experiences, right? Unique games that we just don't get elsewhere. As an example, like Capcom does this sometimes, right? And they've done this before in the past with, like, I think Dead Rising, the very first one, that was more of a unique kind of out of left field experience for them, right? They tried with Exo Primal, that didn't work out for them, but not everything's a hit. They just came out with a new Katsugami, I don't know how you say it, but that game's unique in the way that it plays. It's almost like a tower tower command type thing, where you're basically putting people into positions and that kind of stuff. So it's more like a strategy action game. So I like that type of those types of games. And so I think it would have been beneficial for Sony in this case to let Japan Studio continue to make titles such as Gravity Rush and various other unique titles, right? Because that brings that type of, I think, uniqueness to the brand, instead of having another, the AAA big budget games are great. We got Last of Us and Uncharted and, I guess Days Gone maybe, and some of the other big budget games that Sony's come out with. But, again, those start to feel a little samey, when they're so focused on story and things like that. The stories are great and everything like that, but it's like, okay, it's the same, like, great story. It's like those, I don't know, for me, it's like those movies that, they come out during the summertime and they're all blockbuster hits. Like, they do great and everything like that. Critics and people love them. But if you sit back and look at them all, they're all practically the same exact movie, right? Just told different ways and stuff like that. And you're like, I mean, they're all good in their own way, but they're all kind of the samey. Like, just there's not this uniqueness. And so that's, sometimes I like personally those unique games that come out of just nowhere that you're like, wow, what is this? This is just, it's not the norm. So, but, again, they're a corporation, they're there to make money, not to really necessarily give experiences or, create give studios creative freedom as much as they are making sure that they're meeting certain metrics and making a certain amount of money, right? And things like that. They want everything to be a hit, which is understandable. Everybody does. They're not going to sit there and fund a flop, even though they have, and so has other publishers and developers out there. But their main focus is trying to make these big budget games. Ubisoft is another example of a company that's horrible about that on one aspect, because every game they try to make, they wanted to make a triple, quadruple A game, and it doesn't always work out that way. So it was better even for Ubisoft in that sense, when Ubisoft used to make those unique titles, right? Sometimes when Ubisoft back in the day, we used to get stuff from them that was like out of left field, like what the hell is this? And it was a really cool game. Nowadays, it's all the same formula, right? And it just works for them, right? It works for them. They make a lot of money, even though the next Assassin's Creed or Division or whatever the hell game they come out with is the same as the last 20 of them. They still sell like hotcakes. It's like Call of Duty, they still sell like they're number one on the charts and everything like that. So it makes sense from a company standpoint that they would want to do that. But from a consumer standpoint, it's kind of, I like to see those unique experiences. But anyway, let's just go around and see what everybody else thinks. Shane, what do you think, buddy? What do you think of all this?
Bigger is not always better. I mean, that whole phrase is, works perfectly right here. A good developer, they got pushed down because they, of the type of games they liked and enjoyed. Sony picked him up. Then Sony wanted to change him, and then Sony killed him because they didn't make what Sony made, or they couldn't make what Sony wanted them to make. They made what they can make, what their pedigree is. So it's a shame, and I agree with you. We need just as many, if not more, smaller, unique, different games as we do God of Wars and Halos and Redfalls. Just kidding on that. We don't need that no more. We need those things. A few years ago, one of my favorite games was that Doki Doki Literature Club. Completely, we played it and reviewed it on a gag, on a joke. It's like, oh, we ought to play that, ha ha ha. You know what? Let's do it. Let's just play it, because I've never played anything like it, and I'm pretty positive Pat hasn't. Nick, he plays everything, so he might have dabbled in something like that at some point in life. But that game was so different, unique, and it was such an amazing experience and a great story, and just it just took us all by surprise. And then this year we had Sandland. It started off a little slow, but as you played, you could feel the difference. You could feel the love. You could feel you could feel the uniqueness of what they were going for. That's, to me, was amazing. And I know I'll probably get criticized for this, but for me, I think Senua's Saga, Hellblade, and Hellblade 2 were unique games in their own right, because they weren't the original. I wouldn't have said it was a monster AAA game. I think it was a experiment and passion and something that they really wanted to try, but it worked, and it worked great. And then I think they pulled it off with Hellblade 2, which was a much bigger game, but it still, I think, retained the nuances and everything from the original, because it was all about, it wasn't about just the combat. It was about the world in your head and outside. no other game has given me those kinds of experiences like Hellblade has, and I think they were both amazing games. I think the second one was just as good, if not better. I love those. Those are different. Those are unique, and I think we've got to have more of that. We don't need a new Call of Duty every year. We don't need another Madden. We don't need another God of War every few years. Now, granted, God of War is a great series. Last of Us, an amazing series. We don't need all that anymore. That all the time, I should say. If you experiment with different things like that one Nick was talking about, Katsu Guya, whatever the hell that thing was called. I played the demo for it, and it was different. It was unique. It was even if it may not fall in my love of games, or if it does, because I got to play the full game to make that decision. It's something that's probably created by somebody with passion, because it is so unique. It's created by a team that wanted to try to make something that wasn't like everybody else, and that's what we need more of. That will bring more innovation. That will bring innovation to big tier games, to the AAA games. AAA games sees, oh my God, look what they did with this. That's really cool. We should implement something like that or build off of that. And that's what we got to have. Not everything has to be quadruple A, Ubisoft, $1 trillion budget game. We need games that are just fun, and money has been the biggest destroyer of the game industry. Money, investors, people focusing on the wrong things, people focusing on the things that made the gaming industry what it is. And now they're trying to destroy it because of all the greed. But that is, my personal opinion. So, but I don't feel I'm alone in that. What about you, Pat?
Well, I guess first thing is that Japan Studios is always owned by Sony. Sony didn't buy them.
Oh, were they? I apologize.
Yeah, they were created by SI. SI was it Sony Interactive?
Sony, yeah.
So they were created as a first party studio back in the day by them. Back in the day, 93 or 90s. Yeah. Yeah, because they went SIE and then back like Sony Interactive Worldwide and then SOE.
Too many damn acronyms thrown.
Are they still SIE today?
No, I think they're SOE, right? Sony Online Entertainment.
Sony, yes. Well, hold on. No, is that right? Shit, I had to look because they're
Sony. They may be SIE. They used to just be like 10 different companies. The Sony
I remember
Worldwide.
I remember the SOI.
I remember SOE back in the day too. So they may be Sony Interactive Entertainment now, since they dropped the online piece.
Either way, they're just greedy,
right? But yeah, so I mean, they I don't know, they merged the studio, right? Because technically the studio is defunct, but that was because they merged them into, I don't even remember the name of the studio. I have to look it up again, like Asobi or I can't remember. Something started with A, I think.
I think those are the people that make what is that? The Astrobot game, isn't it?
I thought Japan Studio made Astrobot.
No, I think it's Asobi, doesn't it?
I thought Astrobot was made by Japan Studio. These guys have been involved with so many different projects. Like if you go look at their list of projects that were theirs, and then the projects that they cooperated in is like a massive list. I was like, I didn't realize they had any type of involvement with some of these studios. I'm like looking through the list going, oh crap, I remember that game. I remember this game. Oh, and then they helped these other players. They collaborated in the Wild Arms games, and they collaborated in all this stuff. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot of stuff. They collaborated in the Bloodborne series games,
Yeah, they did do that's Team Asobi and Japan Studio that developed the Astrobot.
Yeah, I was like, I thought Team Japan was in there, but yeah. So, they did a lot of stuff. I didn't realize what all their name was attached to, but now, from what I remember, they made, to use a British term, they became redundant, and they got rid of a bunch of them. They kept a bunch of them. I think Microsoft picked up a bunch of them too, from what I heard. They were like pretty strong 200 person studio, 200 plus person studio. And Sony merged them into that other studio, Asobi or whatever it is. And then Microsoft picks some of them up, and it all started with the downfall, from what I understand, is some of the heavy hitters of the studio left to go make their own studio, their own games, and their own, like this article's talking about. They basically left, and it started like a domino effect. But they probably saw writing on the wall, right? They were like, Sony's not letting us do what we want as a studio, and we've been successful for them up until they started like putting us under the thumb. And now that we can't make what we want, we're being forced to make what Sony wants. We're not as profitable. So they probably saw that Sony was going to be like, sorry, guys, you're not making us enough money. We got to close you down. So, basically, Sony absorbed some left, some went to Microsoft. Other studios picked up people, obviously, too. But, that wasn't that long ago. When did they shut them down? Was it like 2021 or something?
Yeah, 2021.
Okay, so yeah. Yeah, so it is really weird, and it sucks because that's usually what happens, right? Microsoft bought a bunch of studios too just recently, and they were like, you're redundant, and they got rid of a bunch of studios right off the bat, which is really bad about face for them. And then, we'll see what happens to some of these studios in the next, 5-10 years, if they still exist, some of the ones we love. I mean, that's what happens to a lot of studios, unfortunately. A lot of times we don't understand what is happening in that studio before they get acquired. So maybe they were struggling, maybe they weren't, and those type of aspects. But this has been a day one Sony-owned studio who has been around since 93. So, I mean, come on, people. A 30-year-old veteran studio you're going to shut down, because you don't know how to manage them properly and staff them properly. Because in my opinion, that's a management problem. You've got a well-known, proven studio that you probably just abandoned, years ago, instead of giving them the resources they need and the tools they need to be successful, and said, I want you to make, I don't know, the next freaking Fortnite, just like everything else, the next Fortnite or whatever. Didn't pan out for them. And now, sorry guys, you're not profitable anymore. See you later. Instead of being like, well, this is a proven studio, let's keep them around. Let's figure out what we're going to do. Let's keep this veteran studio going. But that's not Sony for you. Sony's just like, oh, you dipped below that red line and you didn't fix it within a year or two or whatever we gave you. So get out the door. We don't want you anymore. Shut the studio down. It's not profitable anymore. Sony is all business. They've not gotten to where they are by being pro-consumer. Let's just put it that way. They're more pro-Sony, which all companies are. They have to be. But they should do a better job of hiding it. That's what they need to do, a better job of hiding it from the consumers. But they don't care. They're waiting for the daisies to start pushing up for Microsoft's graves so they can start doing what they want. So that's my opinion. I feel bad for the studio, but at the same time, it sounds like they've all moved on to probably bigger and better things. It sounds like, they're back to doing some stuff they want because they've done some horror games in the past and stuff. But it is what it is, unfortunately.
Just to look at the games they've developed for a little bit of an older generation, like myself and a little bit of Pat and definitely maybe Nick. I guarantee you guys have played 70% of what's on their list here.
Yeah, Shadows of the Colossus and The Last Guardian. I was like, as soon as I saw those two, I'm like, oh yeah, they made it. I forgot about that.
So Ape Escape, everybody knows, at least knows Ape Escape. Legend of Dragoon, one of my utmost favorite RPGs back in the day. Ico, that one took me completely off guard. That was such a unique and different game, like Nick was talking about these unique things. Siren, I don't think I played that one, but I know that one. Shadow of the Colossus, another one. Holy crap, that thing was awesome. That thing was doing big before big was big. And it was just such a great game. Loco Roco, that was just stupid fun. Eye of Judgment, that was the PlayStation Eye game. Yes, I played it. Gravity Rush, Knack. I didn't like Knack, but the Playroom was the VR thing that came with the VR 1. Last Guardian, obviously a beautiful game and an amazingly fun game. And of course, Astrobot. All of those games have something in common that no no Call of Duty or Metal Gear Solid or any AAA game is going to have, and that is passion of uniqueness. Because everything in all of those games, there's something different and unique about it that no other game has touched upon, and you can tell that, you can feel it, you can. I don't know. Legend of Dragoon is probably the only game in that list I mentioned that's like on the more mainstream cusp. And it was still just a fantastic game, just absolutely. So, yeah, it breaks my heart to see that, and it breaks my heart when big companies hurt little people. But if they are able to form their own studios, kind of get out ahead of time, and I hate when they say they merged them. No, 3 guys got merged. They were on a janitorial staff. Everybody else was let fricking go. So, but anyways, I'm pissy.
Yeah, it looks like these guys did a lot of collaborations on remakes and stuff like that. Like they did Demon Souls remakes and Bloodborne and all that stuff. So they've been involved with a lot of projects, it seems like. And for Sony just to let that kind of a studio with that much prestige just go just blows my mind. But it's all about the money and not about the prestige or anything like that. They're like a no nonsense company, when it comes to the red line.
Yeah,
it's unfortunate.
And there's a lot of, to go over the list that Shane went over, the one of the things that stands out for me is the uniqueness in that list, right? I mean, if you ever played Shadow of the Colossus, have you ever played a game like Shadow of the Colossus? Because I haven't, right? I mean, that game is so just unique. Like, even Gravity Rush. I've played Gravity Rush, and it's a unique game. Legend of Dragoon is a great RPG. Like, all these games are just, they have one thing going for them now, and that's the uniqueness. Now, like I'm saying, not every unique game out there, or every time a studio does something unique, does it pay off, right? It doesn't always pay off, but it's nice to play as a gamer, as a consumer. It's nice to play those games that are unique, right? I mean, one of our most favorite games that we've talked about a million times on here, 13 Sentinels. I mean, you look at 13 Sentinels and you think, I don't know. And then you start playing, you're like, what is this? This is like blowing my mind. This is so good. Like, it's just so unique. Like the battle system, even with the battle system, you're like, what is this down, look down view? Like this looks like it's going to be stupid. Then you start going through it and you're like, oh my God, okay, I got my guys over here. And and then the story and everything, like that game was just so, again, one of those out of left field. Like, I remember I picked that game up and it was just like, I just saw something on it on the internet and people were like, oh, and I was like, that looks interesting. And I picked it up, started playing it, and I told these guys, and then they picked it up. And the next thing you know, all of us are talking about how, and all of us beat it, and all of us were talking about how great that game was. And still to this day, talk about how great that game is. And if you have not played it, you should, because it's still a great game. But that's one of those things, right? It's not your average run of the mill game, right? And again, there's nothing wrong with those. They have their place. It's just, you can't rest on those games day in and day out, right? People get burnt out. They get bored with playing the same thing over and over and over again. And then they start looking at other things from like indie studios and small projects and things like that. And they start getting excited for other things that are just unique and out of left field, right? And we're talking about gamers here, not just people that casually play. They'll play the next Call of Duty 100 times over, but the people that are really invested in gaming and love video games and play all sorts of different games, they like those run of the mill games. Yes, I do too. But I'm always keeping my eye out for something unique or different that brings something different to it. That's another thing from Microsoft that you were saying as far as Microsoft with Tango GameWorks. Not every one of their games was a system seller or anything like that, but they had one thing going for them. They were all unique, right? I mean, you had Hi-Fi Rush. That was another game that came out of left field and people loved it, right? Ghostwire Tokyo. again, it wasn't a super great game. I mean, I enjoyed it. I beat it, but it wasn't a super great game. But it was still a fun game, and it was a unique take on like an open world, like Ghost type of magical power type game, right? The Evil Within is kind of resurgence of like Resident Evil and those older type games like that, and it was a really good game too. So it was a lot of stuff that we haven't gotten in a long time, or had unique perspectives to it, or unique things going on with it. So it sucks to see. And again, these are all corporations, they're all companies, they're all looking for the next Fortnite, as Pat said. But it really starts to, kill the uniqueness and the strive for developers. When developers come in and create, anybody in a development studio and stuff like that creates their own studio or make video games, they're there to create stuff, right? It's art. They want to create things and make these unique experiences and express themselves through the games that they make. They don't want to come into a studio and just make the next Call of Duty 20 times a day, right? I mean, I'm sure the people at Sledgehammer and Treyarch and all those that make Call of Duty all the time, they're probably sick and tired of making a Call of Duty game. They probably want to do something different, right? I mean, because they've been doing it for like 20 years now or something like that.
Just can't lose that cash cow,
Right? I mean, I would be like pulling my hair out like another one. Like, can we just make something different now? Like, that's why they highlight that the fish swim away from you, right? Because they're just like out of ideas at this point.
The tank automatically drives itself.
The game just plays itself now.
Well, the loss of unique developers in unique games leads to a one-track pony show where everybody has put in their loot boxes. Everybody's putting in their season passes, and they're forgetting the games. We can't have that. We talked about how Microsoft is basically going down the crapper. That's going to leave Sony to their own little ways, and we're going to get punished because we're going to lose things. We're going to lose solid development. We're going to lose independence and uniqueness because of corporate greed, and we can't have that because companies like developers like Japan Studios, they've brought up so many different things and unique things, and I feel that a lot of their titles were taken from in far as the gameplay and design and thought processes and all that. I feel a lot of those games you can sense those in other games. It's like the latest Zelda, for instance. You get kind of a Shadow of the Colossus feel in a lot of the areas because you're a little Link and you're climbing up, these big, you're climbing these big monsters and mountains and things like that. It's just we just can't lose companies like this. We can't. So hopefully these new studios that a lot of them have created, they work out. They're allowed to be them. And that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah. I mean, I hope for them that, Slitherhead, I'm interested in Slitherhead. I don't know how it's going to be, but I am interested in playing it, and I hope it ends up being a really good game. So, we'll see.
Isn't it pronounced Slitterhead?
Oh, is it?
I think it's Slitter. I might be wrong.
Head?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, be careful how you type that, guys.
I got my safe search on. Yeah, Slitterhead.
Slitterhead. Yeah.
Yeah. Not snake like slither, but
Slitter. Yes.
Head. Yeah. So
either way, it's painful.
It looks unique, right? Even like we saw that gameplay trailer for it, and I was like, the combat, I wasn't expecting like a melee combat thing going on here, and I'm like, and you can like take over other people and stuff like that. Like it was like, okay, this is weird. I'm interested in playing this. So, and that comes out in November. So we'll see how that turns out. Again, I hope it turns out good. So, but I like the uniqueness of it. Right? They could just make it a regular survival horror game, but they've decided they're going to go in a different direction with the gameplay. than just your average survival horror. So I hope it works out for them, because I like seeing and playing these unique titles, right, that are just different. So, anywho, you guys got anything else you want to add to this?
Nope. I think I'm pretty well good.
All right. Well, let us know down in the comments below what you all think, about the games that Japan Studio created, and Sony, and really not just Sony, it's every big corporation's, their vision for, really wanting to just create that AAA experience every single time. Are you more like us, where you like the AAA games, but you like to also play those unique titles, those kind of like just off the wall titles, or do you strictly stay in the AAA lane? Let us know down in the comments below. But other than that, thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure to like the video if you liked it. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button if you're not subscribed. Do us a favor, help us out. Hit the subscribe button. Also hit the bell notifications to stay up to date with new videos that we do all the time. And we will see you next time.
See ya.